front, if anybody from the back needs a seat down the front. Just welcome everybody to the Scotland Data Science Technology Meetup. Another really good crowd tonight. I think we're a full house as usual, so it's good to see so many people coming along. A first evening in Glasgow, especially with the weather today as well. We've got a busy agenda tonight. We've got 4 presenters, so I'll keep the shows very quick anyway. Just again, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks Tontine again for hosting the event. It's probably been a few months since I've been here, since the last one, and the place looks absolutely fantastic. And if there's any tech companies in and around Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, or any companies you know who are looking for space, there's plenty of space here. And as everybody will see, it's a fantastic place for any businesses. It's startups, established businesses, just any kind of high growth companies. So please help spread the word. It's the kind of hostess every second month for us. Just introduce you to first Steve. We'll get 3 Steves tonight. And Ariel. Steve as well. And introduce you to Steve Martin. Steve flew up from London today to present for us. He's a long-term friend of MBN. We've worked with Steve for a number of years now. Steve's founded and exited 2 data and digital agencies. So yeah, he's worked in the industry for a number of years now. He's recently founded another consultancy. We can tell you more about that as well. So if anybody wants to speak to him at the end, he's here for a talk. He'll be here for a bit anyway. He's going to hang around for a while after if anybody wants to talk. Steve, welcome.
Is that it? Oh, right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you're still applauding at the end. It's really exciting to be here. I've got a presentation here. There's absolutely no tell stories with data in a better way than we do today. You've probably seen something similar to this used before. It's something we in the data industry love to latch onto. The sexiest job of the 21st century. It's been said in different ways and different times. And I'm sure anyone there's probably a few data scientists in the room, and you probably very, I should imagine there. And I can tell you that when I was 15, that isn't actually me. It's merely a representation of me when I was a 15-year-old. I was a bit of a geek, and in fact, my youngest daughter, as they want to do, was going through a few photo album of me and my wife, and she said, Daddy, you were a bit of a geek at school, weren't you? You were in the chess club. And I said, my darling, not only was I in the chess club, I was in the comic book club, and I was in the bridge club as well. And let me tell you, going to school in an inner city, London comprehensive, that was a dangerous group to be in. But I could never have imagined at that point that data would be where it is today. I fell in love with data. I was a student of mathematics and statistics. I love data. I love it to this day, and it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm very passionate about what I'm going to talk about this evening with you as well. So when I started in database 30 years ago, that's pretty much what databases look like, and once or twice these days I still come across companies that's pretty much what their database looks at like as well. What I was talking to, I was with the guys in London on Monday evening, and I said to Robin, because I'd already written my presentation, I said, this is what I've written. He went, oh, no. He said, what they want to hear about, all the things that have gone wrong that you've done. And I said, well, I've only got 20 minutes, and it could be a very long presentation. So what I wanted to do was, bear in mind, I'm taking you on a journey of telling you what I think should happen with data. I want to pick on 4 things that I consistently see as probably not that well done by us collectively as an industry when we're trying to sell data in. So the first thing that I want to talk about is it right? Now, what I mean by this is when we sell tech and data into businesses, you can go quite wrong quite early on by showing something that's wrong. And I don't mean it's wrong as in the data that you show or the tech that you show, but if somebody questions it in a presentation or a meeting, then it's like the sand starting to slide through your fingers of confidence. And you may have been in a presentation, I don't know how many of you actually sell data into organizations. If you're there and you put a number up or a fact up, and somebody turns around and says, oh, no, No, that number's, that's the 15,000. I know, I've worked in this business all that time. And you don't have an answer for that, forget the rest of the presentation. Forget what you're trying to do with those people. So is it right? Is really me saying what you should be doing is justifying everything that you put up in front of people. So if I put a number up saying it's that number, somebody queries it and says, no, it's this number, I have a reason for what I've put up there. I have a reason for why I've said that, and I can counter what they've said. Yes, I accept that you've got a different number, but this is why I've used this. Do your homework well. And I see this a lot with people who come into the industry and have worked for me. I've had an awful lot of people work for me over the years, and they produce their presentations, they produce their work, and we collectively take it in. And if you get a query in a number, it will go wrong. So first of all, get the facts right, justify your numbers, verify them, and make sure that you know why you've put something up there and you can't be challenged on it. It's the same as much of what I've got on here is common sense. In fact, one of the points is common sense. But it's about showing that you've done your due diligence, and it's just doing homework. It's working hard before you try and sell in data. Is it useful? Now, this is something, again, we were just talking about outside, and you may be in this situation. I don't know if there are any vendors in the room who sell software and platforms. I play golf. I'm not very good, and periodically I'm tempted to rectify my lack of skill by throwing money at the problem. And that usually means going on the internet and buying a new club quite expensively, and whatever that price is, I tell my wife it was half of that, but that's sorry, I've broken a bloke's code there to all the women in the room. That's what we're doing. So I buy the club and my game doesn't improve, and it doesn't improve because I've tried to buy my way out of a problem and spent money, and I haven't done the basics of getting out and practicing a bit more. I get an awful lot of consultancy work out of companies. In fact, I was with a large retailer on Wednesday, and they bought a large system to fix the problem that they had in their business. And they came in and said, we've spent X million pounds on this system, and it doesn't work. And there's nothing wrong with the system, obviously. It does work, it works perfectly well, but it doesn't work for them. And it doesn't work for them because they didn't figure out in the first instance why they wanted to buy it. They haven't figured out whether they can use it properly. Have they got the people in place to use it? Have they got the training in place operationally and organisationally? Are they skilled up to use these pieces of software? So when I say, is it useful? When you talk about data, when you talk about technology, when you go in there to talk to these companies, you have to make it useful for them. You have to tell them why they need to buy this. You have to show them how they're going to use it, and then you have to at the end of it, which sadly is what a lot of vendors do that I get involved with. And actually, long may it continue because it makes me a very lucrative living. But what you shouldn't do is walk away. And I do talk to a lot of vendors I work with. Is anyone from the sorts of the likes of IBM or Adobe here? One of the things that I get from when I talk to IBM and Adobe is, we've sold this system in and they're just not using it properly. And that's a problem for them. They want companies to be using these tools, this kit effectively. You wouldn't, for example, a 17-year-old passes a driving test, you wouldn't buy them a Ferrari. It doesn't make any sense. So when I say, is it useful, think in the context of the organisation that you're working into, how they're going to use that, and whether you can help them to make that transition through a solution sale or through a data sale. The next one is common sense. Does it pass the common sense test? I'm going to take my jacket off because it's really hot in here. Does it pass the common sense test? And by that I mean, and I'm afraid if there are any statisticians in the room, you're quite guilty of this quite a lot of the time. The solution that you come up with, which is really interesting statistically, isn't actually that useful when you get it in front of the client. I didn't go in and present it in the end, but the statistician, very, very bright guy who worked for me, probably one of the brightest guys I've ever had, said, I found this fantastic piece of information, and you have to go to, in this instance, a large mobile telephone company and show them this. And I said, what is this? He said, guy, I found this group of people that are costing them an awful lot of money, and I think we can package the tariff up in a different way. And I said, okay, how many are in there? He said, 3. There are 3 people in this segment. You have to go and tell. Well, it doesn't make sense. There's no way that these guys are going to listen to me for a segment of 3. It has to make sense for them as a business. And the last point, and the thing I really want to now talk about for the remainder of my presentation, is can it be understood? And what I mean by that is I can go in and talk about tech and data in front of somebody, and I will sit there and I will make them understand, probably by drawing a few more charts for them while I'm in there, talking to them using analogies and metaphors and bringing it to life for them. And then when I leave, pretty much every occasion, that person then has to go on and try and sell it to other people within the organization. And in order for them, and for you to get a sale or for you to get that data accepted around the organization, when you've gone home, that person has to still be able to understand what you sold to them. And this is where I think we fall down a lot of the time. We haven't sold the story in the correct way so that that person can then go on and transmit that information in the same way as you did when you sold it to them. And this is the art of the storytelling that I really want to talk about. Stories are something we're very familiar with, and I know there has been a presentation previously, Michael. I look backwards, somebody else came in and talked about data storytelling. I'm not going to do that to death. I merely want to talk through the principle of data storytelling, and at the very end of this, I'm going to save 2 minutes at the end, and I want to show you what I consider to be the best bit of data storytelling I've seen to date, and it's something you may be familiar with, but I thought it was worth showing 2 minutes of the video clip so you see it brought to life and the point and purpose of what I talk about. But this guy here, that could be me as well, actually, I think, probably, but it isn't. That's Rudyard Kipling. And he said if history were told through the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. And that makes a lot of sense because stories are what we're brought up on as children. It's the way that we learn. It's the way that throughout history, through centuries, stories have been transmitted. If we apply the same principles that are used in storytelling to data and the way that we sell it into businesses, we have much more likelihood of getting people to buy, spend money with us, and socialize it around the business, and for people to be able to transmit that story within the organization. And that is our next challenge as data people. Because we've got it so far, if we want to then go on and be the true drivers of corporate business, I think this is what we have to do as practitioners of our art. And I want to make a very clear point that there's a difference between visualization of data and storytelling in data. Visualization, here you've seen plenty of examples of this now. Some of you use some of the software, probably some of you involved in companies that sell visualization software, and it's brilliant. Visualization is fantastic, but it's hygiene now. In my opinion, clients expect it to look brilliant. The next thing is to tell the story that goes with that so that you're able to make that connection for them as to what they're seeing there and how it impacts their organization. I'll show you some nice visualization. There we are. There you go. You probably all get that instantly, but this required a lot of selling this. Any of you got children who are doing high levels of study at the moment, they probably studied this chart. That's Soho in the middle of London. You don't really need to read it. You can take my word for it. That's Soho in London in 1854. And there's a chap called John Snow. You may have come across him. He was desperately interested to know why people were dying of cholera. And he went round, and all the black dots that you see there are people whose households have had somebody who's died of cholera in there. And until that point, he obviously saw this map, and he sees in that map what you're probably seeing. There's quite a density around there, and lo and behold, actually, on this, if any of you have been to Soho, on this corner here, there is a water pump, and that water pump's been there since 1854. And it's centred around that cholera epidemic. And bear in mind, at this particular point in time, people believed that cholera was transmitted by what they called miasma, so through the air. That's how the disease was spread. And he identified this water pump because it was right next to the graveyard where they were burying all the cholera victims. So literally, the disease was in the water, and people were dying for it. And he went to the Royal Institute of whatever, and he said, look, this is the map, this is the story, this is what's going on. And he changed. They took the water pump away, and they cleaned everything up and took the cemetery away that was there. And they found out that cholera was being transmitted, and it saved thousands of lives. And he had to go and communicate that story. The irony of this, if you do go there, is that he then went on to become a very famous temperant. He was against all forms of alcohol and enjoyment, largely. And over on this corner today is a pub named in his honour called the John Snow. But that was one form of it, and I thought I'd show you a bit of chemistry porn here. This is the periodic table, which is also a very famous, in my opinion, way of visualizing data until this was created again in about 1870. There was no format for doing this, and this was created and again taken to the Society of Chemists, and it has become normal. And there was if any of you studied chemistry, I did as well, geek. I've memorised it all by line. So that one there was Nanny McGee always sits poised, solidly clasping her arse, was how I remembered it for exams. So that's the periodic table. But my slides are out of order here, I think. Hold on a minute. I wanted to save the next one to the end. Actually, I can do it. I'm good enough. The next slide is something that I wanted to show, which was a really bad, or what I consider the most ugly example of how data has been used and how stories are not been used effectively. I don't know if you actually got this that I'm about to show you, but it arrived about 3 months ago through my letterbox, and I was so angry about it that my wife actually had to leave the house because I was ranting on for quite a lot of the evening. But it was this document. I don't know if this dropped through the letterboxes in Scotland, did it? It did. It's shit, and it annoyed me because it's full of statistics and no story. There is no story, and there's no visualization of what's in this from a statistical point of view. And I will come back to this afterwards, but it upset me because there should have been a great deal of storytelling to go with this. However you feel about the outcome of this, this was a great example of how data was not presented particularly well. And if you're telling a story, you want 3 things. And remember these 3 things, I'm going to hit them again and again now. And in the last video that I'm going to show you, all of these 3 things are done brilliantly. But if you tell a story, it's memorable, it's impactful, and it's personal. And that's what we need to be thinking about every time you look to try and sell data into an organization. So if I talk about memorable, first of all, there was a study done about 2-3 years ago where they got a whole load of people up to do a 1-minute presentation. They gave them no prep. They said, just say, you've got 1 minute, get up and do a presentation on X subject. And most of those people used an average of 3 statistics in that minute when they got up and presented, and only a tenth of them tried to tell a story at all with their 1-minute presentation. And then afterwards, they went back and they said, well, okay, now we want you to try and remember what has been presented to you. And of those, 65% remembered the stories, and the rest, the statistics were lost. And when you look at studies that are done, if something's told in a story, it's 22 times more memorable than if you just use a statistic. Now, statistics back it up, but if you tell a story, it has that much more impact. So it's memorable. In terms of the next one, memory impact. So how are you going to get your point across? I found this, which is quite a well-known piece. This is a piece of work from Save the Children. This isn't the actual piece I wanted to show you, but it does the same story. They created 2 identical pieces of marketing communication with exactly the same statistics in about death rates and what they were trying to achieve. One of them just had the statistics in it. The other one had a story and the statistics in it. And because this wouldn't make a very good presentation if it wasn't the truth, this raised double the amount of money as the other one. So that tells you the power of stories in getting people to part with cash and having an impact, because it does the third thing that we're talking about and make it personal to you. If I tell you a story, my golf club analogy, I medically make different bits of your brain work than when I just give you a statistic. And that's what makes something personal to people. And it just fires everything up. It creates an imagination. I told you a story, you visualize that, and it's got much more impact to you than if I just say, and this is a statistic. It's a fact. It just works, and you know that from real life. If you tell a story, there's a method of doing it. This is something called a narrative arc, which you've probably seen previously, but Cinderella, she's having a really bad time. Her sisters are horrible to her. Everything's a bit crap, really. But look, there's a ball coming up at the prince's house, and the fairy godmother says, "Off you go, and I'm going to give you some carriages and some footmen, and everything will be fantastic." And she dances with the prince, and then, oh, lo and behold, she turns into a pumpkin, runs away, a shoe falls off, everything's terrible, and then the prince comes around and puts the glass slipper on, and they live happily ever after. I could equally have put in Terminator 2 there or Rocky, because it's exactly the same format. And it's a very traditional thing. There's no new stories in the world. They're all done the same way. And if you apply the principles of how you do, I'm not saying for every data presentation, by the way, you have to do this and tell the Cinderella story. But what you should be doing is thinking about how you bring to life the data that you're showing. So it isn't just visualization, it's making it come to life in that format. The other thing to think about when you're telling a story is, who are you telling the story to? So in business, you have a number of different audiences, and they will, one size does not fit all. You can't just produce a presentation and say, there you go, because this person, as I said earlier, has got to transmit it around the organization. If they're going to transmit it around the organization, they're all different audiences, and you have to think about that when you put these presentations together. If you're talking to a peer, expert to expert, you can cut corners. They already know where you are, so you can cut to the chase and give them the information. That is Glasgow, isn't it? I did my homework. That's Glasgow Marathon, I think. But if you're talking to somebody who's a layperson, and I don't know if you guys always dread the question when you're at a party, what do you do for a living? I never know. I used to go with jockey, but I put on a few pounds over the years, so I can't do that anymore. But you're going to have to start from basics and give them information that leads them up to what you want to tell them. If you're talking to a technician, you have to lay it out. If you're talking to somebody on the board of an organisation, the one thing they are really, really short of is time. They just want it quick and get to the point. Tell them what it does for that business. You've got to think about this. And I have to say, I'm sorry to say this, but data people don't do this a lot of the time. They think because they're interested in it, that everybody else is going to be interested in it. So you have to tailor that message to fit. My time is running out, so just to summarise what I said to you there, and this is important. Walk a mile in the shoes of your audience. I used to run a lot of workshops for clients and get them to, and we'd talk to them about different personas, different personality types that were present within their data, and then we would get them to walk into a hotel that happened to be over the road from the office, which was quite a swish hotel. And we'd say, look at that hotel now through the eyes of the audience that we have to communicate with. What are you seeing? And they would obviously come back, and if they were driven a certain way, they'd go, well, I can see where my money's going. Look at this big lobby. And others would go and say, doesn't this look fantastic? This is brilliant. It's exactly what I'm looking for. That's what you have to do when you're selling data. You've got to walk a mile in the shoes of your audience and tailor that story to meet that audience. Then think about how you visualize it. Because you've got your story, so what is it then going to look like? Don't start with the visualization and try and make it, shoehorn it and fit it in. Do the work for them. Because, hello. That's all right. Do the work for them. Make it easy for me. Don't show me a chart that I have to try and figure out what it's saying. Make the connection for me. Make the leap for me. And show me what it is. So I'm now going to show you the video. I think I've got about 2 minutes. I'm going to show you the video that I think does everything that I've just said. It's something a lot of you may have seen, though you probably saw it under different circumstances. So it's this video. So this is a chap called Al Gore presenting. He was he vice president? Vice president from 1993 to 2001. He also ran to be president. And it's become a very famous environmental campaigner. And this is a film that you could go and look it up yourselves on YouTube. It's very well known, millions and millions of hits. But forget what he's presenting. Focus on two things here. He's showing a very simple data chart. And just so you're aware of what he's about to show, because we're going to cut in right towards the end of this, it's 650,000 years of data drawn from ice out of Antarctica. And the blue line is showing the average temperature across that period of time. The red line is showing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere across the same time. He's already said, wow, look at this. Isn't there an incredible correlation between the two lines, which you can clearly see there. He's then going on to say that it's causal and the CO2 is influenced the temperature, but that's not important. What I want you to think about is memorable, impactful, and personal. I want to show you how he presents this last bit of the presentation now. And then think about that in the context of how you might go about presenting data yourself, which is all he's doing here, but he does it brilliantly. So, I can make this technology work. Hopefully, I've left the video exactly the right place.
This is the difference between a nice day and having a mile of ice over your head. Keep that in mind when you look at this fact. Carbon dioxide, having never gone above 300 parts per million, here is where CO2 is now. Way above where it's ever been as far back as this record will measure. Now, if you'll bear with me, I want to really emphasize this point. The crew here has tried to teach me how to use this contraption here, so if I don't kill myself, it's already right here. Look how far above the natural cycle this is, and we've done that. But ladies and gentlemen, in the next 50 years, really in less than 50 years, it's going to continue to go up. When some of these children who are here are my age, here's what it's going to be in less than 50 years. You've heard of off the charts. Within less than 50 years, it'll be here. There's not a single fact or date or number that's been used to make this up that's in any controversy. The so-called skeptics look at this and they say, so, that seems perfectly okay. Well, again, if on the temperature side, if this much on the cold side is a mile of ice over our heads, what would that much on the warm side?
And that's it. I think that's brilliant. I think he does it really, really well. And if you think of the implications of what happened after this was 10 years ago. He won a Nobel Prize. And I would say that though he wasn't directly responsible, the treaties that have been signed for billions and billions of pounds around the world probably started around this time, and he brought it to the fore. That is a brilliant data presentation. That's what we should be aspiring to, and that's how I think we'll take that next step forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. Right for time for maybe one or two questions just now. Then, if we've got time after the full presentations, we'll run more questions. Has anybody got any questions at the moment?
Is it an easy one?
Yeah. Your name's no background. What's the worst mistake you've ever seen involving data, presentation with a client? It's the worst you've ever seen. Not been involved with, but ever seen.
It probably, I'll tell you from my, we'll swap the microphone. I think the first thing I talked about was, is it right? And I've been involved with one or two presentations where, as I said before, your credibility is blown from the off if you make a mistake in data. And it happens, or it happened more frequently back in the day. The worst one I personally was sat in and saw was a very senior level presentation to the board of a significant telecoms company. And it was a board level presentation. I put my hand up, I hadn't checked it, and somebody else was presenting it. At first slide, it wasn't even querying the number. It didn't add up. And it's a lesson. You know, you look at it and might as well have put on the jackets and walked out the presentation after the first slide. And it was for several £1 million worth of business, which I didn't get as a result of that. So that was, and you know what? It was my fault because it was someone who worked for me and I trusted them and I didn't check it and I should have done, and it's attention to detail. So I would say that's the worst one I've seen. It cost me a lot of money, even though it was opportunity cost because I never had the money, but I should have won that, and I didn't. So I would say it's those are the things that annoy me most because they're fixable. They're things that you could do, should do, before you ever walk in there that make your life a lot easier. So, you know, I'm not going to pick a specific time, but that for me was one, that's the first one on my list, to be honest, because I've never done it again. We all know.
No, brilliant. Probably we'll move on to the second presentation now, but again, we'll go definitely more questions. Thanks again, Steve. Brilliant. Our second Stephen now. We can see Stephen Fall is the Application Development Manager at Agreco. Thanks for taking time for coming along.
Just before you go, I probably need you to set up this computer for me.
I've been here, basically.
Ah, sorry, Steve. So, believe it or not, Steve and I spoke earlier this week. So he got in touch and he gave me a call.
and he said, I'm presenting before you, and I just want to make sure that I'm not going to do anything that's going to cut across your presentation. So we had a quick conversation about what he was presenting on and what I was presenting on, and we were pretty sure there wasn't going to be any conflict. Wait till you see my first slide. Thank you. So, thanks everybody. It's great to be here, and it's great to be here presenting in a room full of so many smart, talented people. It's my first slide coming up. So I'm sure you'd all been fully aware of this. But data scientists, it's been classified as the sexiest job of the 21st century. Sorry. But you may not also be aware that it's also been classified as the best job of the year. And for me, there's no doubt in my mind that you guys in this room are going to be the most sought after and the most highly paid employees of the future. You see, in an environment where there's a real lack of skills, the big difference between the companies who are going to thrive and the companies who are going to struggle just to survive is the talent that those companies possess. And that's the people who work for them and the skills that those guys have. Every single one of you is in a really brilliant position right now. You're the experts, the leading lights that are sitting in the crest of a wave of new technology that has got the potential to totally revolutionise the business world. So I know that many of you are working in startup organisations and that you get the opportunity to use all the latest tools and technologies. And I really envy you guys because it's an exciting place to be. But there's many of you who at this moment in time or in the near future are going to work in large corporate organisations where there are constraints around what tools you get to use and what you can actually do. Most of the big corporate organisations are just beginning their journey into the world of data science, big data, and the Internet of Things. And they're going to struggle. They're going to find it really difficult. Big organisations typically are very, very poor at adapting to change. And they're even worse at dealing with technological change and new and disruptive technologies. But they're starting to understand that it's a concern. So 72% of the Fortune 500 CEOs state that their greatest challenge is a rapid pace of technological innovation. And whilst you might recognise it doesn't mean that they're actually any good at dealing with it. I found this statistic really quite revealing. In the last 16 years, over 250 of the biggest names in business have disappeared. And in many cases, it's because they just haven't been able to cope with the step change of new technology. They haven't been able to adapt and harness those technologies to their advantage. And you'll see there's some great, famous David and Goliath stories. So if you look at Blockbuster, a multi-million-pound international organisation whose whole business model became obsolete due to the advent of streaming technologies. If you look at the music industry, so the introduction of online delivery of music completely changed the face of that business. Companies, multi-billion-dollar-a-year organisations like EMI, found themselves being sold off for their back catalogue. And record stores, the traditional bricks and mortar record stores like Virgin, HMV and Tower Records either disappeared or ended up in a situation where they just had some flagship stores. And there's going to be more to come. So you look at what Airbnb are doing and how they're challenging the hotel industry and the changes that we're seeing around the transport industry with the likes of Uber and Lyft. But for me, the best example of all is Kodak. So the demise of Kodak spawned the term Rochester mentality. And it's a warning to any large organisation of the dangers of new technologies and ignoring them. So Kodak, founded in 1888, so the same year as one of Glasgow's most famous sporting institutions. It was the world leader in the production of films, cameras, chemicals, and papers. And at its height, Kodak was responsible for 90% of all film sales and 85% of all camera sales in North America. But digital technology, digital photography was on the horizon, and Kodak decided that it was going to bury its head in the sand. All of Kodak's management, research and development and manufacturing took place in one place, Rochester, a suburb of New York. The company measured itself based on market share and its competitors. So that was its benchmark of success, how big its share of the market was. There was very, very little outside influence in Kodak. All of the senior managers, all of the C-suite had been promoted from within. In fact, since the 1930s, every single promotion for a senior management position in Kodak was an internal promotion. And traditional film was the biggest division within the whole of Kodak. And the way Kodak viewed new technology, and in particular digital, was that it saw it as being a dead-end project. Any moves to try and promote the technology were deprioritized. And essentially, within Kodak, if you backed digital technology against the traditional revenue streams, it was tantamount to career suicide. So the inevitable happened. Slowly but surely, digital photography became prominent. And in 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. And the short part of the whole story is it was actually and invented the digital camera. They had the brand name, they had the marketing budget, and they had the dominant market share. They should have been the leaders in the future of digital photography, but they failed to take advantage of the technology. They buried their head in the sand, and the company collapsed. So it's an extreme example, but it demonstrates how big, long-established organisations are vulnerable to new technologies. And for me, that's the reason why you guys have got such a bright future. I know you're in demand just now, but soon you're going to be in even greater demand. You're going to find yourself in highly influential positions and highly paid positions within some of the biggest organisations, because they're going to look to guys like you to help shape their technology landscape, to keep them ahead of the technology curve, and to deliver on the promise of big data and the Internet of Things. So I manage the applications development team in Agreco, and I always like to put up this slide to give people a bit of an awareness of the shape and size of Agreco. Many people I speak to have never even heard of the organisation, but they're the 10th biggest company in the UK, not in the UK, sorry, they're the 10th biggest company in Scotland. But rather than me kind of tell you what we do, I thought I'd show you a very short video that demonstrates some of the services that we deliver and gives you a bit of a flavour of the global scale of the organisation. time and share some of my experiences of trying to introduce some disruptive technologies into a large corporate organisation. And I'll try and give you a few tips that I've had some benefit from along the way, some recommendations, if you will. So I've built a team of 20 developers, all really exceptional people. And that's my first point, my first tip to you, is that when you're in these large organisations, in fact, if you're in any organisation, is try to build a team of exceptional people around you. One of our strengths as a team is our ability to scan the technology landscape and to identify new applications and technologies that we think can be relevant to Aggreko, and then to take those technologies and run them as proof of concepts or prototypes, evaluate them, and then, if they're suitable, roll them out to the wider organisation. That's what drives me and makes my job so rewarding, is the ability to build something from scratch, to take a new technology and deploy it out to the whole organisation to see it get used all around the world, and to do that from our small team that's based in Glasgow. My second point, my second recommendation, is that you should use proof of concepts and prototypes to deliver these new technologies. Start small, it's cheap, and if it's something that's good, then it will be no problem at all for you to get that adopted into the organisation. As a team, we've had some real significant successes. So in 2013, we introduced enterprise social networking into Aggreko, so like an internal Facebook. It's used worldwide by all the employees, but it's of real significant value to our service technicians. So for example, if you're a technician who's working on a fault in a generator, he's in deepest, darkest Africa, say Senegal, he's got this problem, he can post a question. All the technicians around the world see that question, and they can give him suggestions, try and help him to fix that fault. They can send them drawings, they can send them manuals, and if need be, we can translate all that information on the fly to help. We've introduced geospatial visualizations for our sales teams, and we did that before it became a kind of mainstream feature of most applications. And recently we've been implementing solutions in the cloud, so using microservices and API management. So there's no doubt you need a bit of vision, but probably more importantly, some sponsorship. You need someone at a high level within your organisation who can take these ideas that you've got and run with them and get them put into the larger business. So that's my third point, my third recommendation, is that you need someone who's a really good sponsor. For me, in Aggreko, that's my CIO. So he gets it, and he puts his money where his mouth is. He backs our team, and he understands that an organisation needs innovation to survive, especially within an IT function. If you're not using the latest technologies, you're falling behind, and you're doing a disservice to your company, and to your shareholders. Just as importantly, you need a sponsor to recognise that everything that you're going to do is not going to be successful. So like I say, my CIO gets it, which is just as well, because about 6 weeks after I persuaded them to spend £1,200 on a set of Google Glass for us to run a prototype project for our service technicians, Google pulled the plug on the whole project. So promising prototypes though, that's probably particularly relevant to this event. So in Aggreko, we're rolling out telemetry into all the generators we've got in the field. This allows us to collect 40 data points from the generators. So we're looking at voltages, currents, speeds, temperatures, pressures, etc. And what we do is we take all that information and we stream it up to our global data centre, which is just up the road in Glasgow. And Aggreko have established what we call a remote operations centre. It's based out of Louisiana in the United States. And there's a team of highly skilled technicians out there. And what we've done is our team has developed software that allows these technicians to monitor the telemetry data coming off the equipment from all around the world. And it flags up alerts and alarms to the technicians in the rock. And what it does is it allows them to take a proactive approach. So rather than being reactive, they can be proactive with some of the faults that are coming through. And what that does is it enhances our reliability and it improves our customer service. The guys in my team looked to see if we could take this a bit further, to see if we could move from being reactive to proactive to predictive. So we took a small sample data set and we used a few variables. But the goal was this: if we could detect patterns in the data that led to malfunctions and breakdowns, and if we could do that with just a bit of advance warning, then surely we could build a solution that would allow us to eradicate these faults and therefore build even better levels of reliability and better customer service. So as a result of the work that we had done, we got in touch with the University of Strathclyde because we thought we could maybe get some of their expertise to help us to build a solution, a prototype that would allow us to improve the reliability. And they put us in touch with the data lab. So we went to speak to the data lab. I get the opportunity to go and present to their board to try and seek some funding to run this prototype project. My fourth recommendation to all you guys is that when you get a really good opportunity, get it with both hands. My experience with the data lab's been absolutely fantastic. I got the funding for the year-long project, and we started it off officially in February. And it's been going really well. We've been focusing on batteries and battery charging alternator failures. Just one small area of the faults that we see in the generators. That's my fifth and final point, is that when you think big, but it's a good idea to start small, to start focused. With data, there's a real temptation to go and try and solve every single problem from the get-go. But those in the know, those that I've spoken to that have had success in this area, have always told me, learn to walk before you run. So the initial expectations coming out of that project that we're running is that we anticipate that we're going to be able to accurately detect 1,000 impending generator failures each year around battery and battery charging alternator failures. And we're going to be able to have an average 12-hour advance warning of these failures. This is a significant step forward for us because it helps to build that reliability and improve that level of customer service. But it also allows us to be smarter with the technicians. So no longer should we have guys getting sent out at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and visit a customer site. We should be able to manage all that through the working day. And really, with this, what we're doing is we're just scratching the surface. You see, if we can continue to build on the foundations that we've got in place just now, very quickly what we can do is we can move into this virtuous cycle of benefits. So if we extend our remit to look at multiple types of failures, we should be able to reduce the number of breakdowns that occur within our fleet. And if we can reduce the number of breakdowns occurring in the fleet, then we can reduce the service and repair costs. It will also allow us to increase our levels of reliability and enhance that customer service. That will allow us as an organisation to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. That should allow us in turn to increase our revenue through new and repeat business. And that will drive additional revenue for the organisation. And the formula there you can see, so the additional revenue combined with the reduced service costs means increased profitability. $500 million. That's what Aggreko spends each year on service and maintenance. If the work that we are doing can even initially look at cutting 1-2% off of that total, that's a big saving for us, a significant result. So finally, just wrapping up, here's my top tips, my recommendations for introducing innovation into some of the bigger organisations. Build a great team. Takes a lot of effort, but it's really worth it. Gives you some great benefits. Use prototyping when you can, and fly under the radar. I've always found it's good to keep things close to your chest, keep it quiet until such times as you've got something to show. Find yourself an excellent sponsor, someone in the organisation who gets it and who's got the clout to drive your ideas into the bigger business. Take your opportunities when they arise, grasp them with both hands, and start focused, but think big. Always think big. Thank you very much.
Another excellent presentation. Enough time for maybe one question just now before the next speaker. Is anybody a question at the moment? Anybody at all?
Maybe just a one. Do you find that the sort of ROI on the, you were talking about there, some of the benefits that you were able to demonstrate, did you find that internally communicating those in numerical form was always a prerequisite?
So that's where I'm fortunate that a CIO who understands. I think in most large organisations there's normally a requirement for you to build some type of financial model and give that return of investment. But with new technologies it's a really difficult thing to do. And a lot of the times in big organisations what they expect is for you to be able to tell them this is what the benefits will be and this is what it's going to cost. And they don't like that level of uncertainty. In a lot of organisations that promotes small incremental change rather than that disruptive step change. So it is a challenge. I think you've got to have an organisation and a sponsor who understands that ROIs may be something that you've got to just see coming in the future.
Right. Yes, one quick question. It's a loaded question.
Sure.
From Brainwave's perspective. When you think about that data that you're collecting, do you think about the external value that data might have to others? And then when you think about ROI, the potential to kind of monetize that data asset you're collecting?
Yeah, we do. So again, we're really fortunate in the fact that the engines that we use in the generators, we've got two main suppliers. One of them's Cummins, and the other's a company called Jenbacher, who are a GE-owned organisation. And we've actually become the biggest customer for both of those companies. So the data that we collect becomes really useful to those organisations when they're looking at product development. So there's the opportunity, I don't know if we'll ever sell that back to them, but it maybe helps with some of the negotiations in the future.
Thanks very much. Also, you'd Steve would say that. Hi, we've got our first speaker of the night, Ariel. Ariel's a data scientist for the Data Incubator. He's actually a guest flight. He's over from Washington DC. Ariel's been working closely with the Data Lab. He's just finishing his final day tomorrow, delivering a 3 weeks data science boot camp in Edinburgh through the Data Lab. So I'm sure that's ran well as well, and we'll talk about that just now. So welcome, Ariel.
Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about stuff which is pretty similar to what the other speakers have talked about, though my perspective might be a little different. I'm kind of doing this stuff from the trenches, so the tips that I want to give you are kind of from that perspective. But the idea is the same. We want to behave in a little bit of a smarter way when we are doing data science. Just because it's a relatively new kind of phenomenon doesn't mean that we should just blindly do things without thinking. And so a little bit about myself. I do a really good American accent. So I actually was a scientist before I got into this industry. I was a material scientist, and I spent my days in the basements of government laboratories, far from the sun, in front of the green glare of the electron microscope, this giant microscope as big as this, as big as this room. And we shoot the electrons through thin pieces of material and watch how they bend. And that's what I did for days and days and days, for years and years and years. And then I realized I wanted to go outside. So I transitioned into data science with the Data Incubator. And Data Incubator is a data science training organization primarily. And we are mostly known for our fellowship program, where we take PhDs and master's students who want to transition away from academia and toward data science. And we give them a a free pass to our 2-month boot camp, where we teach them the skills which we think that the skills that we think they need to know in order to become competent. And the learning philosophy that we have is essentially that we want to let people teach themselves. We want to give people hands-on projects and let them fail at those projects, and then learn how to get out of that failure state. And if you can learn to fail without getting frustrated, without giving up, then you will kind of get on this path where the obstacles kind of become fun, and you kind of start allowing yourself to be creative, and you're not afraid to try things that are new. So we make them fail a lot. We give them very difficult projects to do, and we give them very little time to do them. And we try to build this spirit of collaboration coupled with independence. We want people to be independent enough to solve their own problems, but we want them to use other people to help them. And without going into the philosophy of yin and yang, it's enough to say that employers really like this. Employers like people who are capable of doing stuff independently, but also are willing to work as a team. And so I like to say that we're not trying to teach people how to win the Tour de France. We're just teaching them how to ride a bicycle and how to get better at riding bicycles. And by the time they get through with our program, we try to convince employers that they're going to be able to be very good competitors in the future. So we have 250 or more partner companies. It kind of changes. And the incentive structure that we have is, I think, pretty cool. So we have this free program for PhD students who don't have jobs. So they're really motivated to learn. And we have employers where it's free for them to participate in our program. They only pay us if they make a hire. So they're really motivated to hire because they want people who aren't just putting data science on their resume, but people who actually have struggled and managed to complete very difficult data science projects. And so we're very motivated to train people very well so that we can get them hired, so that we can take our Scottish vacations. No, just kidding. But that's how the incentive structure kind of works, and I think it's a pretty good model. And so we have this core intellectual property of our curriculum, which is this combination of code snippets and ideas and methodology, which we are constantly updating and improving. And that is kind of why I'm here, is that I'm trying to take that curriculum and teach it to people who are just want to learn some of these skills. You don't need to go through the whole boot camp. In Edinburgh for the past 3 weeks with the data lab, teaching things like data wrangling in Python, machine learning, and this week, visualization. So it's been a great time so far. Last go see comments about how great the data lab are to work with, and I didn't have to remember your name because you're all students. So what I want to talk about today is this idea of the data pipeline. So as a data scientist, you're probably used to hearing about this idea that, the data science algorithms themselves are part of the job. You've got to do data cleaning beforehand. You've got to do the visualization afterwards. You've got to do the telling part of it. You've got to think about decision-making and business ramifications, strategy, all of that. And that's very true. But even when it just comes to technology, without decision-making entirely, we generally have a lot of different steps we have to go through to get something that's actually a working product. We have to ingest data from somewhere. We have to keep that data somewhere. We have to move that data around to different people. We have to give some kind of means for them to explore it. It has to be cleaned. It has to be processed. It has to be analyzed, modeled, iterated over, visualized, all of this stuff. And while there are companies that say they will do all of this for you, often you want control over these parts of the process, and perhaps you want to build a specialty in one or more of these areas. So what I want to talk to you today about, pretty briefly really, because I want to give time to Brainwave, because I hear they had a good day today, is how do we build these pipelines in a way that we can change them without breaking stuff? How do we scale up these pipelines to deal with more data in a smart way? And this pipeline itself is kind of a project that has to be managed. So I'm kind of talking a little bit to project managers here and people who are a little bit higher up. It's really not enough to come up with a pipeline that you like and say, great, we've figured it out. And we have our pipeline, we have our data coming in here, it goes through this, it goes through Spark, we print it out, and then we bind all that stuff into a book for clients, and we're done. Because one of the core cultural principles of data science is this idea of rapid iteration. We're always pushing for new things, new technologies. There's always some kind of external demand for some new functionality, or if it's not external, it's coming from inside the company. They want to do something new. Maybe somebody in a meeting is like, wouldn't it be cool if we could, instead of binding the book, actually like put it in an email, and then we wouldn't have to print out all this paper. Well, that would be cool. What would that involve changing? And then there's always the kind of comments that are like, well, so-and-so uses this, we should too. Google uses MapReduce, we should use MapReduce. And those also make people think. But changing the way things work always incurs costs. And this is something which I think often goes under the radar, because people are very proud of the new technologies which they've deployed in their company. They're very proud of the thing that they've set up. And they often don't appreciate that for those of us in the trenches, every time you introduce some new technology, there's some price that has to be paid. You often break all the integrations that you had with the other pieces of your pipeline. You often invalidate the old knowledge and experience and know-how that you've built up internally, how to fix problems, how to fix something when it breaks. You have to learn that stuff all over again. And you often have unexpected repercussions. So you might find out maybe weeks or months later that because you changed one thing, all of a sudden your backup data isn't storing the way that you thought it was. And now your backups for the past month are gone. So I want to talk about how we future-proof our pipelines. And I have 5 tips that your competitors don't want you to know about. It's maybe a little bit better than BuzzFeed. So the first step is to consider the implications across your pipeline, right? If you imagine that every piece of technology you have is connected to other technologies in the chain, when you take one of those links out and replace it with something else, you don't just affect the things that are adjacent to it, you may affect the other parts of the entire system. And your overall capacity is not dictated by a weak link that you can replace. It's dictated by all of the pieces working together. So, for example, a common workflow is to get some data in, do some modeling using Python or something like that, and then use that model to create some kind of visualization for a client. And then maybe you've got a web page where that visualization is updated in real time as data comes in. Well, I can't just change the modeling piece and expect everything else to stay the same. I did a project where they had a very simple model. They wanted to do a more fancier model, like a neural network instead of linear regression. So they did a neural network. Well, the neural network actually takes a lot longer to make predictions than linear regression, because the data has to be processed by this neural network before you can get the prediction out. That meant that instead of having a smoothly updating visualization on their website, now they have a visualization that updates like every few seconds. So what they did affected the job of the front-end engineers, and they had to work like extra hard to get it to be like really smooth and good-looking again. So a lot of production workflows require this degree of interconnectivity. You can't just expect that the best machine learning software is also going to handle your visualization for you or your website. So you have to have these links, and that means that changing one thing changes all of the other things in some way. And the other point I want to make here is that the connections often exist between people as well. And these are connections that, if you become an expert in machine learning or an expert in linear regression, you get to know the engineers very well. You've been working with them for a long time, getting the right data for your kind of model. All of a sudden, you switch models. Well, now a new person is in charge of the modeling. Now they've got to build a new relationship between these two people. And that's something that takes time. Often, it's the efficiency of these connections which I see mattering a lot. The strength of the relationships, which actually makes things flow really nicely, as opposed to just the raw capabilities of any one piece of technology. And the second tip is very similar to what I've heard here already tonight, which is identify what you want from the store before you go shopping. My advice to anyone doing data science is to forget buzzwords. They're all about selling you stuff. Forget about hype and all of the hottest new technologies. The first thing you have to think about is what you need and what you want to do. Once you identify what you want to do, then you can think about whether or not a new technology is worth it or not. There are a lot of people back in material science who I saw get sucked into this hype train of the fancy new microscope, which they happily sell a new one each year for even, it's millions and millions of dollars for these things. And they'll buy the microscope first and then think of how they're going to use it. And I think that that's completely the opposite way of what you should be doing. You should have some piece of science that you want to do that requires the use of a microscope. Then you go buy it. And older technology often has advantages. I do a lot of stuff with Spark, which is a very popular new way of doing distributed computing. The old way to do it used to be using Hadoop MapReduce, which Google made famous. And in blue, you can see kind of the Google Trends results for MapReduce, and in red is the Google Trends for Spark. And this is about March 2015-ish. So people look at this and they say, oh, Spark is really up and coming. Like, everybody's really interested in Spark. We've got to do Spark. And I look at this and I say, nobody was using Spark 2 years ago. So if something breaks, how am I supposed to know how to fix it? MapReduce has been around forever. People know that inside and out. They know how to fix the problems. There's a huge knowledge base out there. It's very stable. It doesn't change anymore. Spark is changing every month. So this is like a real cost. And that's not to say it isn't worth it. It just means you have to do the cost-benefit analysis. You do have to go shopping eventually, or you're going to starve. So even people who are very set in their ways and very confident that they don't have to upgrade often find themselves forced to upgrade because of just accumulation of data over time. And you don't want to be caught off guard by that kind of thing. You just want to be aware that there's going to be growing pains, there's going to be some productivity disruption, and it's fine to have that. It's easier to justify that to people if you can point to the fact that you've thought of this already, and in the long term you think this is going to be a net benefit. This is a pretty straightforward one, but I think it's important from the perspective of data governance. You want to make sure that new solutions don't break your old functionality. You basically have to test, and then test again, and then test again. And then not just test each individual component, but test the integrations between the components. And as a software developer, I really hate writing integration tests. If there are any other software developers here, you probably know what I'm talking about. But they're absolutely necessary for making sure that, especially with sensitive information core to your business or personally identifiable information, like in healthcare or something like that, you really cannot afford to have some change that you make affect that data in an unforeseen way. The really cool part about writing all these tests is that you get to establish a reference of all these test cases, which means all of your employees who've been writing these tests have in a way been writing down what they think is important, how they think the product should behave. What are the use cases which are in their heads at the time? And this is kind of like an asynchronous form of knowledge transfer to the people who you hire next year. Because they're going to see those test cases and say, oh, so they were thinking about this, and this eventuality. That's interesting. I never thought of that. So a lot of stuff happens in a very informal way, like a very, I don't know what to call it, like a grassroots kind of network, developer to developer through code. The fourth tip is to establish a feedback loop. Feedback is really important regardless of what you're doing, but it's particularly important when you've just changed something. Because if you can establish a metric that determines how well the change is going, you can feed that back into your decision making for how you're going to go about making future changes. And not only that, but establishing a feedback and monitoring mechanism often makes employees feel supported. Like they're there trying to figure out this thing for the first time, and now they have an avenue for them to say, well, what do they think is going wrong? What do they think is going right? There is this idea, Pareto principle, of the 80-20 threshold, where 20% of your effort gives you 80% of the yield. An extra 80% effort gives you the remaining 20% of the yield. It can be hard to figure out where you are in that, like what percentage you're at. How do you know when you're at 80%? How do you know when you're at 20%? Monitoring is one way to kind of get at that. Because if you have some kind of metric that you had from your previous pipeline, you can see if you are meeting those same standards. And lastly, I think that it's really important to focus on the people. This isn't just because I am working for a training organization, but it's because of something which I've noticed for a long time. Material science is an interdisciplinary science. It's a mixture of physics and chemistry and engineering. And really, all we do is we take the ability to talk to physicists and the ability to talk to chemists and translate between what they're talking about and turn that into a new idea. That idea is not because we're super smart. It just comes about because we can understand both of them. And in a lot of situations, we've built these silos of expertise. Somebody's very good at modeling. Somebody's very good at the web. Somebody is very good at visualizations. And data science is, I think, in many ways like material science, in that a lot of the value comes from bridging and communicating between all of those silos. So when it comes to scaling up your functionality as a company, it's really important to have open communication across all departments. Just because we're talking about technology doesn't mean that things like marketing and business development and sales and human resources don't matter. A new marketing initiative that says that they want to put our model visualization hosted on 3 other websites, that actually has implications down in like an engineer's office somewhere. So it's really important to retain the advantage that we have as data scientists of being able to talk to statisticians, being able to talk to programmers, being able to talk to business people, and use this idea of data literacy to give ourselves better perspective on what's going on and better ability to help other people. When something does go wrong because you changed something, it's nice if there's somebody next to them who they can talk to or somebody who can help them. And that comes about when people kind of understand enough about what everyone's doing to collaborate. And I think that along with this idea, there's this idea of you don't want people to feel left out. You don't want people to feel like I'm scaling up my capacity in this way, and we're going to start doing machine learning instead of the statistical modeling we've been doing for a long time. And if I'm a statistician, well, what do I think? We're moving away from like my expertise. Well, you can train those statisticians to do data science very easily. The whole point of our fellowship program is that there's a very small gap between what people already know and what you need to become a data scientist. So don't let people fall through the cracks when you're upgrading stuff, is kind of the last idea. So I will leave it at that and ask if there are any questions or if you've experienced similar things. And thank you for your attention.
Any questions? No? We've spoke to the head of Tonti. There will be a little bit extra time for them working after, so we'll definitely will take for questions. Gillian,
Yeah, no, it's just there's a small gift here from the team here in Scotland. So just Ariel's taught 50 people over the last 3 weeks, from commercial organisations, from the public sector, from our NHS, and some of and sharing his expertise, and we're absolutely delighted that you've done so, and we think you made a big difference to those 50 individuals and all of the organisations they're going back to. So thank you very much.
Yeah, final presentation tonight. Steve Coates from Brainwave. Steve.
Thanks, Michael. Save the best Steve until last. I am genuinely a Steve, unlike Ariel, who just wants to be a Steve. So anyway, straight on to my first slide for the evening. I think we've already covered that one. No. Really, what we'd like to do this evening is actually tell you a little story, harking on to the first presentation. This story actually began for me personally about 2 years ago, and it started in quite a sad place but has ended in a good place. So 2 years ago my mum was diagnosed with cancer, bladder cancer, and that's a journey that many of us have to go on through life when you know people who go through this. And very strangely, about 3 months after that diagnosis, I was introduced to a chap called Don Baker, who is the founder of Brainwave, and he is streaming in from Jersey in one of these cameras. So, hi, Don. And I was introduced to Don. We went for dinner in Cambridge, and over a steak, I think the second sentence he said to me was, "What if the cure for cancer is not in the minds of those that have the resources available to them at Cambridge or at Oxford or Edinburgh or Glasgow? What if it's in the minds of somebody who doesn't have that resource?" That was quite freaky for me, given what we'd just been through as a family. And that was the sort of hook, and that was my hook into the Brainwave story. That was about 15 months ago. We've come a long way, but we are still at the very beginning of our journey. And actually, what I want to do tonight is actually tell you all a little secret, because we're not actually launching this product, probably for another 4 or 5 months. But what we would like to do is launch an alpha version of that product and invite everybody who's here tonight to become part of the alpha team and help us take this product to market. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. I think if I reflect back on my own career, one of the many mistakes that I've made many times actually is not listening to people too early enough in the process. So I think when we had this opportunity through Michael and the Data Lab to come this evening, the first reaction from the team was, oh my God, we're nowhere near ready. Why would we do that? But then actually we thought, well, do you know what? This is a friendly community. It's a community of data people. It's a community actually where we all want each other to succeed and we want to try and help each other out. And actually what better way than to try and bring those people in on our story and help us take it to the next level. So what you're about to be shown is a secret, right? So don't tell anyone. And it all starts actually with our mission. And this is quite relevant to a lot of what's been said today. So the world's data, universally discoverable, accessible, and usable, okay? That data pipeline that Ariel had, I thought that was brilliant, because we talk about that a lot. And the idea that actually you've got all these fantastically clever people who spend most of their time trying to find data, trying to clean data, trying to access it, and they only spend 20% of their time actually analyzing it and trying to come up with the insight. And this is a little bit back to what Don was saying about the cure for cancer. If you can turn that paradigm round and you get those brains actually doing the work, analyzing, looking for those insights, the power that that could unleash in the world is quite phenomenal. So that's our mission. I'm not even going to read this out. You know this, but it was interesting to listen to Steve when he said he was in the chess club and data was geeky and it was, 3 people in the playground hiding in the corner. We're in a different world today. It's the fuel that drives everything we do, and people recognize that. It powers our apps. It provides us the solutions. It's the output of any artificial intelligence. So sadly, if World War II didn't happen, I think the Turing test would never have got to where it got to afterwards. You need data to fuel that. It's basically the key to the knowledge economy. And these are kind of some of the pillars that drive us as a Brainwave team. You can never do anything on your own. And actually, we were really fortunate. For those that don't know, some know in the room, actually, I only moved to Scotland about 3 weeks ago. So before then, I'd lived for 18 years down in London. And, that's where I was introduced to Don. And when we were starting this idea out, we quickly realized we needed to partner with really clever people because we didn't have all of that knowledge internally. And I phoned up my old professor at Edinburgh because I did my degrees at Edinburgh. And he remembered me after all those years, and he was really open and welcoming, and he said, come on up, we'll introduce you to some people. And then I think very quickly after that, I met the Data Lab, who couldn't be more friendly in terms of what they were doing for us. And in 12 months, we've already completed our first project with Glasgow, and we're halfway through our second project with Edinburgh. So, it's just phenomenal what was open to us. And actually, in contrast, down in London, we were swimming around in Tech City, and we were being introduced to all different organizations, and nobody really cared what we were up to. So it's been a real boost for us. So what is Brainwave? This is being in stealth for 15 months is really fun because you can't tell anybody anything. Everyone's like, what are you doing? Oh, I could tell you, but I'll have to kill you. We've got to move away from that. And this is the bit where it starts to get quite nerve-wracking for all of us because we are now a team of 19 people. We're based in Edinburgh. And we've all been working very hard, and this is really the first time that we've lifted our skirts and shown people. So that's why I'm certainly a little bit nervous tonight. But essentially what we're trying to achieve with our mission is, we want to give access to the world's data through a single API. We want to have impact in a measurable way. We want people in this room and in the broader data community, when they are doing their analysis and telling their stories, giving them a mechanism to take that to the world. Make money from it. So, there's a case study which I'll talk through later, actually, that when you tell a lot of these stories, and this was the loaded question that I asked to Steve, a lot of organizations we talk to, they have these data assets that they spend a lot of money collating, and there's real value in there. And so actually being able to understand what is the value to other people of that asset, and actually, is it strategic to the company, or could we sell that asset? And save time and effort. Let's flip that pipeline on its head. Let's not waste 80% of our time looking for stuff, cleaning stuff. Right, what's next? I was going to do a live demo tonight, but my Wi-Fi wasn't working. So I've just grabbed some screenshots, actually. It's much safer for us to do this because we are genuinely in alpha mode. And I'll tell you a little bit how you can get involved afterwards. And I guarantee you there will be mistakes, there will be errors, there will be things that won't work. That's why it's an alpha product, right? But we need your help to kind of figure those things out and listen to you. But essentially, when you come into the Brainwave world, in some respects, it's a marketplace for data. Okay, so it's pulling all different types of data together, from geospatially enabled data to time series data to unstructured social media data. It's a one-stop for all. You really can't see this because it's too small on the screen. But what we were trying to show you here is that when you search for data on the platform, there are different ways to view the results. You know, from the sort of the standard, you know, here's the list, here's what's on there, to actually getting spatially enabled data. So looking at it by region, by country, by parts of the world. And again, being able to zoom in and say, well, actually, I just want all the data that's in the Glasgow area, and then pulling back and being able to do that. So just some bits and pieces. And then when you find the data, you know, what can you do with it? So eventually, you know, when we go to the launch in Q1 next year, there will be a single API so you can plug into it. But the idea is being able to download it and plug it straight into your analytics tools. So we're already thinking about now, what are the popular tools out there so that we can build the plugin so that you can just click a button, access the data with one click. That's our vision. So at the end of tonight, you're all going to go away and hopefully become part of our alpha team. And I'll show you how you can do that in a second. What we'd really like you to do is try and engage with us and play with the platform. We've put a button on there, which is the question mark. You know, we're trying to make it as simple as possible for you to click things and feedback, say, look, this doesn't work or that doesn't work. You know, so that we can gather all of that insight. And as we build this product, we sort of build it, take it to market as a group, so that it actually helps you guys do what you need to do. And then we'll build it out from there. So, join the alpha team. So I've got some scratch cards here. And actually what I did is I told the Brainwave team to disperse themselves, you know, across the crowd so that we can network and get to know as many people as possible. So, and they're one of the best teams in the world, so I'm sure they've done that. So if the Brainwave team could just stand up and let everybody know who they are. And there's Hervé at the back there. So, no, so we'll be mingling afterwards, but the team have all got these scratch cards in their pockets, so please come up and find us. We'll leave a bunch lying around on the side as well, so if you're too scared to come and talk to us, we're not scary people, but just help yourself. Underneath the scratch card, there is a password and a username. And when you go to brainwave.com at about 9:30 this evening, so in about an hour's time, it'll be live on the site, and then you'll be able to log in. And you can join our team. What does that mean? So what do we want from you? We basically just want to hear anything from you. So have a play with it. Tell us what data you like, what you don't, what didn't work. If you can do some bug fixing for us, that would be great. I mean, we have a team of people in Edinburgh, that's their job to do that, so they get paid to do that, but it'd be great to supplement them with kind of people who are not so familiar with the platform. And get in touch with us. So as part of the Alpha team, forevermore, we were saying that you'll have exclusive access to the founding team. So, you know, we couldn't all be here tonight, so I've spoken about Don. The other member of our founding team is Graham. So Graham's our CTO, who, very interesting chap. He's spent his whole career building large data systems. And one of note is he was a big part, he led the team actually that built the European platform for Bloomberg. So big data specialist. He retired very young, went to Australia, bought a farm, loads of horses, and I phoned him up on Skype and said, look, I've got an idea. What do you think? And he said that I had him at Hello. So he was a Jerry Maguire fan, I like that. And then 2 months later, he relocated from the other side of the world and became part of the Brainwave team. So that's the sort of the founders there. And we'd like you to have access to us as you help us sort of build this thing out. We know nothing in life is for free. So as a thank you for all those that do enroll, forevermore, so when we're bigger than Google, when we're bigger than Apple, when we're the biggest thing in the world, the first 100 people will always be part of that Alpha team, and they will never have to pay for any access to the Brainwave platform. You'll have to pay for the data because that's out of our control. But as we build in features in the future where it becomes a subscription model, the Alpha team will be with us forever. We know that that's in the future, and we can always talk about the future, but actually we also thought Christmas is coming up, so why don't we give away an iPhone? So in December, when we look at all the feedback that we're getting, we'll do a little prize draw, and the top 20 will pick out a winner, and we'll give a little Christmas present out. So that's our thank you to you. What you will see as the Alpha starts to evolve is some of our partners coming on board. So these are, hopefully you recognize the brands. We deliberately approached some of the leading players in the data market because we wanted to establish credibility. If you talk about satellite imagery and remote sensing, Airbus and Digital Globe, they're the Coke and Pepsi of that world. So to have them both is phenomenal. Skyscanner is a local business, and actually, it was the Data Lab that made the introduction for us. And they're sitting on a goldmine of data, and for years have been wondering how can they monetize that data without impacting their own core strategic objectives. And we've worked with them over the last 4 months to build that out. So these are some of the partners that will be going live over the next 3 months. How to get started. I just thought about this as I was coming into Glasgow, and I chucked that on there because I remember when I was a kid, the tagline, made in Scotland from Gardas. So why don't we have Brainwave, made in Scotland from data scientists or something? But it just stuck in my head, and I thought that's really relevant because we want you all to get involved, and we want to be proud of this thing and let it grow globally and say that it all started in the room here tonight. So, really hope you can get involved. In the future, we're going to be building, so we talk about communities and helping you guys get your stories across and building your profiles with the world. And we will be building in mechanisms to do that sort of gamification of that idea so that as you contribute or as you submit data sets or as you sell data sets or as you advise people, you kind of build yourself a recognition within that platform. And all of that starts on day one. So all of the feedback that we get, that starts to feed into that process. Be honest with us. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. If you think it's rubbish, tell us. We've got pretty thick skin, actually. We've had to have. Anyone that's been involved in a startup knows that if you haven't got thick skin, you've got to go home. We're used to those types of conversations and would really love to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll come back to your presentation again. Connections, they're there. If you do see bugs, just click the button. There's on the back of the card, actually, as well, you've got an email address that comes directly to Don, Graham, and I all the time. So if you find bugs, either click the button on the website to report it. That would be great. We can stick it in our queue. We'll get it fixed as quickly as we can. We're limiting the Alpha team to the first 100. Now, when I first spoke to Michael, he said there'd be a few friendly folk here tonight. I wasn't quite expecting so many, so we might already be at that. But if you do know people that might be interested, let them know. There is a mechanism on the homepage. So if you're in the Alpha, if you've got one of these cards, you can click the button and it'll come down and you can put your scratch card stuff in. Or if somebody wants to get involved, they can just send us an email and we'll get them onto the list to get us up to that magic 100 number. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, that was great. It's actually great to try to understand what Brainwave do. I've actually been recruiting for them for about 7 or 8 months now. Found quite a few data scientists, developers, but to understand what they do now might make our job a little bit easier as well. So thanks very much for that. No, that was great. Brilliant evening tonight. Great crowd. We've got some time. Is anybody, I don't know, anybody any questions for any of the 3 Steves in Ariel?
Yeah, I've got a question for the third Steve.
Yeah.
Hi.
So, one of my projects was that I used to be quite senior in the NHS, and I was involved in the project that allowed the NHS data to be available for research. And one of the things we did to establish was an ethics committee. Also worked at Tesco Bank when we started collecting geo data on customers as part of the Tesco Drive app. And we realised that the amount of data we could collect and the amount of links you could make between your Tesco grocery data and the stuff coming from mobile phones was really quite powerful. So we formed an ethics committee. Okay? So you're the watcher. Who's watching you?
You guys, the Alpha team at the moment. I mean, we're a startup, okay?
So these guys work for money. Is money the only thing? If Trump comes to you and starts asking for demographic data, are you going to give it to him? Is it all for money?
No, I don't think we're in it for money. I think, well, maybe I should ask the Brainwave team. What do you guys think? Do you feel... They're all looking at me now saying, don't test the bugs, Nick. It's a difficult question. No, I mean, it is a good question, and it's who watches the watchers. And I think, as we grow and become bigger, we will have to address that, we'll have to think about that.
I love Margaret Atwood's book, Oryx and Crake. I'm not sure if you've read it, but I think you should. It's about uncontrolled data and the amount that people can do with it to change a different world, the dystopia. Yeah, I love the idea of allowing all information available, but I would love it to get an ethics dimension to you as well, so that you would restrict some of the uses if it wasn't in common good.
That is a great question, and actually that's the first Alpha Team feedback, and we will take that back in, and thank you for that.
Yeah.
So are you just are you going to? Is this just going to be a platform for people to sell their data to other people?
So it's not just commercial data, no. So it's open data as well. So it's about making data accessible to all. Okay. So in fact, some of the early sources that we put on there, there's no commercial value to it at all. So we have to balance as a business. How do we make money out of this thing? Because we're all good people. Actually, all of us are over the age of 40, so we're not young. We've had good careers. Okay. But we've actually, we've all got that kind of ethical background about, okay, let's think about how we start this. How do you find the cure for cancer? Right? That wasn't, how do we get all the world's data in one place and then sell it to everyone and make loads of money? That's not where we started from. But I think, so we have to balance that thing about actually achieving our vision, and even the second word in our mission, accessibility. That's about making data accessible to the hard of hearing, to the visually impaired, to the, it's right at the core of everything that we do. But at the same time, when you do a startup, you need to monetize it. So we're in that position now. We think, okay, yes, we want to make the world's data accessible. We're working with a number of academic partners that you've all seen, and there's no money being changed hands there. That's about making access to data. But at the same time, you bring on commercial partners, so you have a model that supports that, so that you can continue to do everything. So it's not all about just selling commercial data. It's a mix of those things.
Another question, kind of related. So you're talking about clean data, right? So who cleans the data? Is that part of what Brainwave does, or?
Yeah. So I'm just going to point to. So that's a really good question. So it's.
You're acquiring the data and you're cleaning it out and then putting it up on the webpage.
Yes. So we have a team of data scientists, PhDs, doctors, MBEs. We've got that built into the structure. With some of these early clients, that's exactly what we've been doing for the last 3 months. We've been taking their data and figuring out how do you clean that data, how do you make it usable, how do you slice it up so that people can access that data. So there is definitely.
Can I ask, please?
Can I have some easy questions?
Hero was talking about the feedback from the data. So when you do a data science job, it's about generating new knowledge.
Yep.
So does the platform allow that new knowledge to get fed back to the owners of the data?
That's a fantastic question. Yes, it does. Not right now, but that's exactly what we want to enable. So as a community of data scientists and people who work in data, we always have this concept that when you take some data sets and you mash them up and you create something new, you should be able to click a button and then monetize that. Because actually what you're doing is creating a new product for people. So that is part of the marketplace concept, is that as the community grows and as the community starts to create their own products, giving them a platform to either, I keep saying sell because I'm a businessman, I'm a CEO. If you get the CIO up here, he wouldn't say that word as much. It's about making those products available to the world, either selling them or giving them away for free.
So is the option to sell the knowledge back as well? So that you sell the data, but can you also, the data scientists sell back the lessons learned from that data, or is it a fee? Is it purely giving back?
No, so if they've got if it's their profile and if they're selling it on the platform, it's their knowledge that they're selling, so the money goes back to them.
Okay.
I've got a question for Steve. You've obviously at the start we mentioned you've been the founder and started up 2 data consultancies and you've exited both of them. What do you find the hardest part about scaling a data agency?
Culture. I wanted to set a company up that I would want to get up and work for. So you avoid that Sunday afternoon or that Monday morning feeling when you're in the shower and you go back there again. I didn't want that. I wanted, and actually, you said I never set a company up to make money out of it. I set both companies up because I wanted to do something that I wanted to do. And I think if you set up to make money, that's probably the wrong route to go down. So the hardest thing with expansion for me was culture. I got up to about 100 staff in 3 countries with my last business, and it's really difficult when you've got the distance and the people to maintain that culture you have when there's probably, how many of you got at the moment? 19? 19 is really easy. You all know each other, you know what they did at the weekend, and you've got a little family feel. As you get bigger and bigger, it's really hard to keep that, and you work quite hard at it, but that would be the toughest thing I found at the end of it. And actually selling it was a bit rubbish. Honestly, because it was probably a mistake to do so at that particular time, because I then gave away my baby. And having built it up, you then give it away. And then they fired me, so it's...
That's not you. Any other questions? Yep.
So brain groups again. So you're essentially a data broker, are you not? You intend to buy data from people or have them sell it to you and sell them to others. Data brokers already exist. How are you doing?
So that's a very good question. So I think the first point for us is we start out as a data marketplace. Okay, so this alpha thing that you're seeing now is the first part of our journey. And yes, well, there is an element of brokerage with the commercial partners that are on there. From a technical perspective, what we've built we feel is different because it crosses the different types of data, from spatially enabled, satellite imagery, remote sensing, time series data. So there's an element of breadth of functionality. And then you start to enter that world of it. Where we position ourselves on the value chain is kind of at the beginning. So when you talk about visualization platforms, I think one of you guys was talking about the fact that actually there's some fantastic products that are out there now. And if you read any of the industry reports, the investment over the next 5 years is going to be in discovery, because if you've got rubbish going into the product, you're going to have rubbish coming out of it. And that's where we want to focus our efforts. And yes, there are brokers of data out there, but actually building a community experience where you plug together the ability to buy and sell your data, the ability to connect with other people within the community, the ability to, yes, connect to some visualization tools and tell the stories of your data. You build it up from there. So
you'll be having a forum, Joe?
A forum?
It's a community forum to talk about the data?
Yes.
That's quite good.
Yes.
Question for the director. You're doing preventative maintenance and you're doing predictive analytics. Did you have to leverage a significant amount of failure data in order to develop the predictive analytic algorithms?
Yeah, we have done, but it's been a challenge. Some of the data that we are using for the truthing data, if you like it, is dependent on input from our service technicians. And what we found is that some of the technicians are really good and some of the technicians are not so good. So we've got some real challenges in the data there. So yeah, we've got a fairly large data set. We've probably got 4 or 5 years worth of data that we can leverage to help us to build those models.
So it's mostly from the data, or is it a lot from the stories that your text?
Yeah, so that's interesting. What we're focusing on just now is the data. But one of our next steps is, myself, one of the developers that works on my team, and the guy that we're partnering with from the University of Strathclyde, we're going over to visit the remote operations centre in Louisiana. And what we're going to try and do is distill, they've got like 260 years worth of experience between them, these technicians, try and distill that knowledge into some data models so that we can take advantage of all that knowledge that the guys have got.
Maybe one or two more? Yep. Bernardo? Yep.
For bravery.
Okay.
I've seen, I really like visualization. Does it have any meaning? Because I've seen the crop time presentation. That presentation.
Visualization.
Yeah.
The honest answer is no. The designer developed that. This particular visualization, it doesn't have any, there's no kind of meaning behind it other than the fact that we like it and it kind of gives a feel of what we're doing. It's a good question. But no, we've had, how many people here are in startups or working in startups? Because things change every day, don't they? If you know, it would have been funny actually to put one of my first slides up that I ever spoke to an investor about, completely different to that. So it evolves, but we kind of like the visualization, but there's no.
Because the second one kind of like different than the one that I've seen, so I thought that it might have something message on the line. That visualization.
Do you know what? I'm going to make up a story. So the next time that question comes up, so if you see me standing presenting in the future, I tell this amazing story about how each one of these blips and it just go with it because I'm making it up.
No, yeah. One last question. We've still got some time.
Sorry, for you, back to the first point. How do you make sure that Fancy Bear aren't selling you data?
So
How will you make sure that it isn't Fancy Bears that are selling you data?
Fancy Bears?
Yeah. The guys that hacked the Russian-backed hacking group that released 500 million sets of Yahoo data.
How will we make sure that it's not them? You know, we're not at the moment. We're a people-driven organisation, so we put those controls in place. But coming back to actually, it's given me a chance to go back to that other question, which thank you for that. What we talk about is what we're developing in the background, which there's a lot of stuff that we're not talking about now because it's still in research and development, but it's around the science that's behind that search bar. Because we always talk about solving people's problems. So, the cure for cancer was one. I was with Scottish Enterprise today, and they were talking about they wanted to figure out how much malt whiskey over the age of 15 years had been exported in the last 5 years. I don't know why they wanted that, but the technology that's in the search bar, what we're building in the background with the machine learning stuff, is how to understand and break that problem down and present with the data that can solve those problems. So then you come on to the question, well, what that data that you're solving there, how do you put controls around that? And I think all I would say at this stage is it's something we're aware of, so the people that are behind this, I can't talk too much about their background, and perhaps over a beer you can come and ask me about what some of the team members did prior to Brainwave, and that would give you confidence behind that answer. So it's definitely something we think about, and it's something you have to put controls into place. I can't answer what those controls are tonight, but it's a good point.
Right, we'll leave the questions there. Just before we finish, big thanks to Product Forge for the live streaming. Thanks very much. Thank you for support again this evening. Great, as always. Team, thanks very much. Brian Benny. The four people who've given up an evening to come and present tonight. Thanks very much. Still beer and wine and maybe some cold pizza, and maybe about half an hour left as well to have a chat with each other and network. So, yeah.
I'm Johnny, and I'm the founder of Street Change. This whole idea happened because I went along to Product Forge.
Product Forge.
Product Forge.
Product Forge.
It's a hackathon with a twist. Yes.
Hi, we're Team Goya, and we've developed Goya, a social fitness app, at Product Forge.
I recently took part in the Product Forge, where a bunch of maybe 30 or 40 people, I think, got together.
You get to, experiment a lot and try your best to do many things that you've never done before.
Product Forge starts off with the team building, which makes it for a very different experience.
It's totally focused on product.
It was a really, really great atmosphere to progress forward with an idea. I've always been real interested in business, and I saw so much opportunity in the technology sector. The problem for me being that I didn't have any development knowledge or design. I guess it just gave me confidence in the technology sector that I wouldn't have otherwise had before.
It was great. It's the first one we went to, and to win was just fantastic.
It was very good fun.